Good afternoon, everybody. Steve Sapseed here. I just wanted to make sure that you could all hear me. If you maybe just type something into the chat or the question box. Or Dave, if you can just confirm you can hear me okay.
I can hear you, Steve.
Great.
Welcome to the webinar.
Okay, it's 3 p.m. I think let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this first of 3 webinars we're running in a series called the Use Case for Qlik Sense at your University. There's myself, Steve Sapseed from BME Solutions on the call, as well as David Chisholm, who's on the call as well. I'll be doing the presenting and the talking during the call, and David will be hopefully answering some questions if we get any questions through. So this webinar should last around 30 minutes, and I think let's get started. So the agenda that we'd like to cover today really is 5 things. Why did Qlik release Qlik Sense? What is Qlik's strategy? We've done a nice matrix which shows the differences and the similarities between ClickView and Qlik Sense, and those will be we'll take you through those on the client side, so the development part of the software, the data engine that underlies the Qlik software, the data preparation differences and similarities, and also some collaboration features which Qlik Sense has. We're also going to look at what we think, and the focus is on what we think, not what you think, are the use cases for Qlik Sense at universities. We'll be talking a bit about Qlik's ongoing commitment to QlikView, and different versions of they're committed to developing QlikView. It's still very much the flagship product and the product most in use. And then finally, just to show you a product demonstration of Qlik Sense and what it looks like in terms of the latest version. We think it's quite slick. So during the webinar, you could type questions in. There's on the right-hand side, you will have a GoToWebinar panel. So you're welcome to type questions in during the webinar or after the webinar. You're absolutely welcome to email me your questions as well. For those of you, and I think pretty much almost all of you on this call, we probably know already, but just a brief introduction into BME Solutions. We've been around for 20 years. We specialize in business intelligence reporting and forecasting software. There are around 40 UK universities that use Qlik, 33 or 34 of our customers, and as a lot of you will know, we have a strong HE user group and forum as well. But let's get going. So what is Qlik's strategy? 1993, long time ago, ClickView was released, and there are thousands and tens of thousands of ClickView customers around the world. In 2014, Qlik released Qlik Sense, which was their self-service visualization tool. And in 2015, Qlik bought a company called Vesuvi and added imprinting into their product range as well. And imprinting really is for reporting as opposed to dashboard analysis on there. And a few of you actually use imprinting as well. But very importantly, all three of these products are built on the same technology. They're built on the same data engine. So whether it's ClickView, Qlik Sense, imprinting, they all use the in-memory associative memory engine that Qlik has. But if we drill down into that a little bit more, why did Qlik release Qlik Sense? Well, first of all, from a cold start, the first time you see the product, it's easier to use than ClickView. Next point is it gives end users, because of the ease of use, it gives end users the ability to create their own visualizations on the software. It has a better rendering display. Not only does it, I suppose, look more modern, but especially even on your desktop, but especially on mobile devices, iPads, tablets, phones, it renders very, very nicely. It was also Qlik's response to a more simplistic self-service BI market. When products like Tableau and Power BI came along, the whole drag and drop of creating charts and creating visualizations, Qlik wanted to tap into that as well, and hence released a simpler product. But the one thing we want to drum home is Qlik Sense is there to complement, not replace ClickView. ClickView is not going anywhere. So what we've done is, under 4 headings, we've just created a matrix to talk you through a little bit about the key differences as we see it of the products. And in this matrix, we've got some blue circles. The more blue in the circle, the better we feel the functionality is. So we've got quarter circles, half circles, and 3/4 circles. So if we look at the client side, from a unified web look and feel, Qlik Sense, what you see on the desktop is exactly the same as what you see on the web client. ClickView, you will probably know you've got this web viewer which you go onto to see how it's going to render. And it renders quite nicely, but there are differences. Qlik Sense has a better touch interface. When you're working on your iPad or on a tablet, you can actually develop and author visualizations or dashboards on an iPad, something you can't do in ClickView. In terms of a responsive design layout, ClickView, I know some of you listening to the users we have are frustrated by, well, what size do I develop for? It looks good on my screen, but when I send it to somebody else, they have to scroll up and down and left and right to actually look at the information. What Qlik Sense does is it has a responsive design layout. So depending on the device you're using, or even the size of your laptop or your desktop, it will also fit to that size, and also auto arrange the visualizations in a way that is sensible. But Qlik Sense isn't all peaches and cream. There are some areas where ClickView is still a lot better. So ClickView, you can design dashboards and visualizations within millimeters in terms of what you actually require. So if you want to move an object just a fraction to the left, a fraction up, fraction down, you can do it. It also allows you, if you click on an object or a chart in Qlik Sense, to absolutely customize that chart to your particular liking. From a guided analytics point of view, ClickView we feel is better than Qlik Sense. You can have action buttons in ClickView. You can make certain things happen based on what users select. You can have pop-up help, which I suppose drives the user behavior in terms of what to do next. And then ease of development. I suppose it's difficult to talk about ease of development here because most of you are very good ClickView users. But once again, from a cold start, Qlik Sense is more simple and easier to use than ClickView. If we look at the data engine that underlies both products, you can see the first three lines, all circles are exactly the same color, 100%. That's because the engine which underlies ClickView is the same engine that underlies Qlik Sense. So in terms of the associative indexing, the actual in-memory speed of click to results of that click, the data connectivity in terms of of what they connect to is identical. Where there's some slight differences are under search-based analytics. ClickView, you can have a search box and search across your data set. In Qlik Sense, it extends to actually being able to search on visualizations that you've created. So it'll actually include names of visualizations in your search. In terms of the range of visualizations which are available, we've scored ClickView and Qlik Sense equally because ClickView has some visualizations which Qlik Sense doesn't have out of the box, and vice versa. Qlik Sense doesn't have some visualizations that ClickView has. Unfortunately, I think with any product you use, you're never going to get an absolute full list of every single possible visualization. Where ClickView scores better against Qlik Sense, the last item on there is the actual customization of those visualizations. Because Qlik Sense is a simpler product, they don't have the same myriad of selections and tweak buttons, and if you right click on an object on a chart in ClickView, there are hundreds of different things you can tweak. Qlik Sense doesn't have that same full range of those things. Data preparation. In Qlik Sense, data prep is never going to be absolutely wizard-driven. By the nature of it, you do actually have to type in some code. But in terms of Qlik Sense's, the wizards that sit on top of the data load and the scripting in Qlik Sense, they've designed some very clever wizards which don't, things you needed to code in ClickView, you no longer need to code in Qlik Sense, and there's a nice example of that in the demo later. And finally, on the differences and the similarities, Qlik Sense has a great data storytelling board where you can almost create the equivalent of a PowerPoint to get your point across, and you can drill down from the charts or the visualizations in your PowerPoint straight down into the data in Qlik Sense. You scored managed reporting, which is inprinting. Inprinting works with both ClickView and Qlik Sense as the same. But where Qlik Sense scores a bit better than ClickView is, as you know, ClickView's access point. In Qlik Sense, they call it the hub, and it's just slightly easier to use and to navigate and to share things out of there. And we will demonstrate some of this functionality in the demo at the end. So once again, as we see it, it's not necessarily as you guys see it. The use cases for Qlik Sense is where you want to allow your end users to design their own dashboards or their own visualizations, very importantly highlighted there, based on your governed data set. So the data set that you currently use for ClickView, you can open up to Qlik Sense users, and they can create new dashboards, and they can quite easily copy, let's say, an existing dashboard in Qlik Sense that you have created as the master dashboard, and save it as something else, and then use it to tweak and change what your users want to see. The second point on the screen is it actually frees up your time in terms of, let's say, development for users. If you have a group of users that are frequently asking you to make a pie chart blue instead of pink, or they're not happy with seeing this on a bar chart, they like to see it on a scatter chart or something like that, it will free up your time in terms of giving them a much easier tool to develop on, as opposed to giving them a license of ClickView. Once again, the responsive rendering is a good use case. If you have senior people at universities who walk around with iPads and phones and want to check analytics on those sorts of things, you're going to get quite frustrated opening up a ClickView app on a mobile phone. You'll have a much better chance of making sense of a Qlik Sense app on a mobile phone than you will as a ClickView. Of course, the last one is you can actually design and author dashboards on mobile devices. So people who are on an iPad can actually take a dashboard and actually tweak it and change it and drag measures from the left to the right and actually create visualizations on there. So those are very much the use cases of the software. But it's also very important that we don't want to be seen to be telling you guys to use Qlik Sense. There's no need to use Qlik Sense if you don't have a use case for it. And the CEO of Qlik wrote a letter to everybody back in February 2018 stating their commitment to ClickView in the future, and that it is really up to the customer to decide which product they want to use for which use case. So I'd just like to reiterate, ClickView is not going anywhere. It will be developed going forward. It will be supported going forward. There's going to be at least one new release a year going forward. So you're in good hands in terms of ClickView. So the demonstration, which I'm going to do, which I've practiced, so hopefully it'll go fine, is on the latest version of Qlik Sense. And the main items I'm going to cover on here are the data prep, the wizards and the automation around data preparation, something which was released quite recently in Qlik Sense, which is automated insights. So the software will actually produce charts for you based on the data set that you put in there automatically. We'll cover the grid-based design of Qlik Sense. Qlik Sense, you need to actually follow the rules of the grid. You can't, like I said earlier in ClickView, move things millimeter by millimeter. You are locked into a grid design. I'll show you the example of rendering and displaying on mobile devices, and then finally also some fixed measures. So I'm going to go and open my Qlik Sense dashboard. Sorry, rephrase, Qlik Sense Hub, and I am going to create a new application, which I'm going to create on the fly, or a new app, as they call it. So if I click on Create New App, this is the Qlik Sense Hub, and I'm going to type in Webinar and say Create, and say Open App. And you'll notice the first thing Qlik Sense does for me is it prompts me to add data. This is an absolutely blank application. So what I've done is I've created, before this webinar, 2 Excel files. One of the Excel files is called Student Details. I use this for loads and loads of demos. Student ID, age band, domicile, gender, and student detail related information. And the other file is the student course load file, where I also have student ID. It's going to be my join field. And then I have different course names and the departments and faculties that those courses feed up into. So one of the options I have with Qlik Sense is drag and drop. So I have a Windows Explorer screen open here, and I'm going to take my student details file and drag it onto the Qlik Sense desktop. I'm going to just minimize my Windows Explorer, and I can see that it's interpreted that file with column headings up across the top there. Now, one of the options I have in Qlik Sense, as I was talking about wizards, I can go and filter that data using this wizard interface. I can add a filter. The field I want to filter on is going to be status, and I have both active and inactive students in my data file, but I just want active students or active records to come through. And I'm going to go and add the data, and I can see that Qlik Sense straight away says to me, do I want to generate automatic insights based on what I've just loaded. And in fact, I don't. I want to load another table before I do that. So I'm going to go back to my data manager. I can see I have a student data blob in the middle with the table names down at the field names down at the bottom. And this time I'm going to drag my file called student course load onto screen. Once again, it interprets the data for me, and I'm going to add the data to my model. So what I have now is two tables, or blobs, or whatever you want to call them. And up in the top right here, it tells me total tables 2, unassociated tables 2, recommendations 1. So it's giving me a recommendation, which I'm going to preview, and it creates a link between those two. And if I click on the link, it shows me that it's found STU ID in my student data file, and it's found a STU ID in my course file as well. So I'm going to go and accept those joins, and I'm going to load the data. Not much data. It's only about 6,000 records in each file. Now, what I can do if I go off associations and onto tables, I can actually go, if I double click on a table, I can see in the load engine just a summary, I suppose, of those data fields. So I can see that in my student ID field, I have close on 6,000 distinct values, and total value is exactly the same. So this is a distinct field. If I click on age band, it gives me a little chart, basically, which shows me that the data I have in those columns, it just gives me like a preview, I suppose, of the data that we've got. And if I obviously click on gender, I'm assuming I'll only see 2 columns, and I can see how many records I have of each type. So I'm going to go load the data, and I'm going to now go and edit a sheet. So I'm going to create my first dashboard. Now in the top right-hand corner here, I've got something which says Insights. And I'm going to click on Insights, and I'm going to say Generate Insights. I can, if I want, type in some stuff in the search field up at the top here, but I'm just going to just generate insights just based on the data set that I have loaded. And what Qlik Sense does is it says, based on what you've loaded, here's some stuff, here's some visualizations you may want to use. You can obviously chuck them away. And I quite like the map, and I quite like this department chart. So I'm going to add those to the sheet, and I'm going to go to my sheet so I can see those visualizations. And let's just put them, auto-arrange them side by side. I want a few more visualizations on there, so I'm going to go and click on Insights again. And this time I'm going to be a little bit more specific in terms of what I want. So I know there's a field called FTE. That's found it there for me. And I know there's a field called gender. It's found it for me there. And I said, give me a visualization based on FTE and the gender, and I'm going to add that to the sheet. Go to the sheet, and it creates that visualization there for me. I'm going to go back to Insights and say, actually, I want to see FTE, I want to see gender, and I want to see another field, I don't know, age, band, and I'll add this one to the sheet. And I'll go to the sheet, and it puts it onto the sheet for me. Now I can still go back and edit that sheet. So Qlik Sense, you've got an edit and a done kind of mode. And if I go to this particular visualization, on the right-hand side here, it actually now gives me a chart assistance feature where I can say it's generated a tree map, but I want to see what other charts it could recommend for me. And it's given me a table down here. It's given me a distribution plot. I scroll down a bit, it's given me a line chart, it's given me a country chart, it's given me a box and whiskers chart. I quite like the look of this chart, so I'm going to click on it, and Qlik Sense will change the chart to produce what I want. So I'll save this file, and I'm going to go and create a new sheet. So create new sheet, and this time I'm going to go and create a measure which I'm going to lock down for users of this particular dashboard. And just to talk through, on the left-hand side, we've got fields. So these are the fields that I've loaded from Excel. I have master items, which I have none. I have various charts. I haven't actually created a chart from scratch. I'll just use the insights here. And I've got custom objects, which I don't have any. Those are extensions to Qlik Sense, which are downloadable from various websites. So I'm going to go to master items, and I want to create a measure. And I'll say create new, and it gives me the expression editor, which you've probably seen in ClickView. And I'm going to say I want to have student ID, and I want to count of student ID, and I'm going to insert it, places it into the add expression, and I'm going to apply, and I want to call that student count. And I'll create it. So that measure now can be locked down so that when any user goes in here and wants to look at student count, they will have to use that field. You could block users from creating their own measures and interpreting the information in a way that it's not supposed to be interpreted. So I now have a field called student count, but I still have access to all of these fields here as well. What Qlik Sense has as well is a really clever way of being quite intuitive in creating new charts. So I'm not going to create a chart now. I'm just going to drag my FTE field onto a dashboard. And you can see what it does is it says it's one number. I've taken one field. It's a numeric field. I'm likely to want the sum of that field, so let's put the sum of FTE in there. If I wanted to drag something else on there, so I'm going to drag level of study onto that chart. Qlik Sense says, well, probably a bar chart is the best way to visualize that information. And if I then want to, let's say, click gender onto here, it'll give me a tree map and say, well, that's probably the best way of visualizing the information. And of course, I can still go onto my other, I can recommend other visualizations in here and replace them as well. Or I can just go and start editing this chart, and I can start editing this chart and doing my own thing with it. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go and create another sheet and show you the normal boring way of creating a chart. So charts down here. I want to create a bar chart. I'll move it onto the canvas. But you can see Qlik Sense simplifies everything. So it tells me, prompts me, add a dimension, add a measure. So I'll add a dimension, department name. If I click on add a measure, I can see my student count up there. But if I want to do it by FTE and I click on FTE, it then says to me, do you want to sum it, count it, average it, minute, max it? I actually want to sum it, and it will produce the chart for me. So it's quite easy to use. ClickView, you need quite a bit more showing around and training to be able to use it. Whereas Qlik Sense is a little bit, just much easier, I suppose. The last things I want to cover off, if I go back to my original sheet I did, was the grid lines. I'm hoping you guys can see them. I know that my screen is rendering okay, but you can see there are some lines. There's a grid behind here, and if I want to resize and my charts and my images, I have to do it within those parameters, those grid line parameters. I can't tweak it exactly how I want it, and I suspect that's because of that's the reason why Qlik Sense can render on different devices. So I can make it smaller or I can make it bigger, but I'm constrained by the lines over here. There's a new feature on Qlik Sense which was added, which was the ability to extend the sheet. So if you wanted to have a long sheet, I turn on Extend Sheet and click on Extend Sheet, you can see it starts extending the sheet downwards so that I can place items one underneath each other. In terms of looking at this on different screen sizes, if I resize my screen, I don't know, tablet or iPad screen size, you can see that unfortunately a lot of these have got weird names because I haven't taken the time to rename them, but you can see how it resizes the items based on the screen size that I am looking at. If I happen to be on a phone and it was a nice little thin screen like that, not only resizes the objects, but it actually reorders the objects as well. And I still have the ability to click on one of those objects and maximize it so that it actually covers the whole screen if I wanted to. So that's really the demo part I wanted to show. The other thing I was keen to speak about was this is one of 3 webinars. The next webinar is at 3 p.m. on the 6th of September, where we'll show you how to use the ClickView converter tool. And Dave covered this in Barcelona a little bit in terms of converting a ClickView application into a Qlik Sense application. And that works quite nicely. And the second thing we'll cover is how to leverage your ClickView development work that you've done in Qlik Sense. The third webinar we'll be having on the 12th of September, we'll talk about how you can swap ClickView licenses into Qlik Sense licenses for no charge. I'll put it in capital letters. If you have surplus, a lot of you guys have session cals, which you may not be using. There is a way you can actually redeploy those licenses as Qlik Sense licenses. And then finally, a Qlik Sense installation and deployment options in terms of how do you actually deploy Qlik Sense. So now it's time for some questions. I don't know, Dave, if you've had some questions while this has been going on, but if you've responded to those on the chat, or if you want to respond to those in voice, you can.
There's been one that literally came in from Damien 2 seconds ago, so I haven't answered it yet, but I will do. And the question is there a different management console and access point for Qlik Sense? Yes, there is. So the management console is a different from ClickView. Better, in my opinion, as someone who's used both. It introduces a concept called streams, which allows you to control who sees what easier than you can do it in ClickView. And the other question is, do people typically have both products or one? Typically, don't know on that one. I would say plenty of people have both. Depends when they came into the market. If they already had View, they might well have Sense as well. If they come in afresh, they'll probably just go Sense rather than have both. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that one, Steve.
Yeah, I think we've probably got around 4 universities now that use ClickView and use Qlik Sense. And those would all be universities that started their journey with ClickView. So I think people are starting to see that there is some value in using Qlik Sense, especially around, I suppose, the more clean look and feel, especially around the users that can do their own thing and create their own visualizations. But the key is always, making sure the data set is kind of locked down sufficiently, so you don't have different people coming up with different numbers, I suppose. Yeah.
The next question from Neil, I'll leave with you, Steve. What questions should institutions be asking ourselves to help decide if they might want to move?
I don't know if move is the correct term. There are ClickView allows. There's some very good ClickView applications out there, especially around guiding users to choose certain things, and almost providing a navigation path for users to explore the data. So I think it's very much a use case scenario. And in that slide I covered earlier, where we spoke about, do you have users wanting to do their own thing? If you have users wanting to do their own thing with the data, you as a developer don't want to be stuck there saying, every week with a bunch of requests saying, can we make the dashboard slightly different? If that's the case, then I think Qlik Sense is a good option to actually put a tool like that in the hands of people who can actually do their own thing and have their own view of the information.
And the next one, which I'll take, if that's okay, can you please discuss more about the limitations of Sense? I.e., lots of functionality has been outsourced to third-party extensions, no alternate states, and no show hide. There are things in View that aren't in Sense. There are things in Sense that aren't in View. So, for instance, if you use alternate states in View, that doesn't exist. That concept doesn't exist in Qlik Sense, and nor is the show hide. It's very much open landscape with Qlik Sense. You put stuff on it. It's not driven analytics. ClickView is very much a driven analytics. Click on a button, things appear. Qlik Sense is very much, here's the visualizations, or here's the ability to create your visualizations, go on the journey however you'd like to go on. So they are different, I suppose, different sort of use cases in that sense. Will things from View carry on appearing in Sense? Yes, definitely. Will new things appear in Sense? Well, yes, definitely. You can see from the demo Steve gave, there's things that appeared in the last release that are new. So it's a very changing world. Will all the things in View appear in Sense? No, I doubt it. I think some things just don't fit the Sense model. So I suspect, I don't control Qlik, obviously, but I suspect realistically probably alternate states probably won't appear. And I don't know about the buttons. I suspect, or the show hide options. I don't know on that one. I suspect that won't either. But I say that they are different sort of uses. One more question from John. Do any of the unis that use Sense actually have users, vice chancellors, etc., who create their own dashboards? Or do they use it just to make much better looking dashboards? Steve, I don't know whether you've got any experience with that one. I would say my experience, I know people who've, once they've got into it, do create a lot of dashboards. That it may still be the initial dashboard is created by whoever creates them at the moment, be it IT or be it planning, but power users do get into adding their own pages to dashboards. Whether many create their own dashboards from scratch, I don't know. Steve, any thoughts?
Yeah. I would say that what is more common is there may be some basic dashboards which will be authored by let's say, a ClickView developer, as they currently are on the screen, and they would develop some basic dashboards, which then a user can very simply save as and create their own copy and produce, change the visualizations or add different visualizations to it. There have been cases where we've been asked, there's a vice chancellor who's very IT savvy who'd like to do this kind of thing, but I don't think I've seen a vice chancellor with his hands on as a ClickView developer quite yet. Probably be quite a while before I see that. But it will certainly take. I mean, I'm not out there in the field as you guys are in terms of, are there lots of requests that come in? Is there a group of slightly irksome users that always want something different? It's those sorts of, it's that kind of decision, you guys would need to make. The other thing possibly for Qlik Sense is when it comes to embedded analytics, if you want to embed charts and visualizations within web pages, Qlik Sense would be a better tool because it was written in a different language to ClickView. The front end, I think ClickView is C++ and Java, where Qlik Sense is HTML5 and Java. So it does have it lends itself better to the web, I suppose, than ClickView does.
that's all the questions. I think 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's all the questions that have come in.
Okay. All right. I think there's a lot of food for thought there. We're not as BME Solutions. We're not saying use ClickSense. We're saying I think the reason we wanted to run this webinar series was there seemed to be a little bit of confusion around ClickSense and what does it do? Do we need ClickSense if we've got ClickView? Those kinds of questions, and we just trying to unmuddy the waters a little bit. And if you're going to go for guided analytics and all your users ever do is change filters, click on a filter and they're happy with it, then fine. If you've got users that want to be a bit more involved, you yourselves will know in ClickView, going into a chart and changing properties on a chart. There are so many of them. I forget every time I go in to how I did the last one, kind of thing. With ClickSense, you can have a look and you can download the product, and on the right hand side of where we had those chart options, have a play and actually see what's there. So and of course, email David or myself if you have any other questions. And David, any other questions that have come in, or was it all still quiet?
No, that's still it. Yeah, that's it.
Good. Okay, so I think we'll end it there. I know a lot of you have also registered for the webinar on the 6th of September. So if we don't speak to you before then, we will see you then. And thank you very much for attending and making the time. Much appreciated. I'll end this off now.
Thanks, everyone.